Hello, my name is Violeta, and I am going to explain the most important concepts of the units that I have had the opportunity to read in this subject. I'm going to start presenting what is translation. The translation is the expression in another language, target language, of what has been expressed in one language, source language, preserving semantic and stylish equivalences. I'm going to start with the culture and translation. The translation from one language to another can bring a culture shock. The customs and ideas of a person from one country to another are usually very different, even in communication. I think that translation is extremely important to learn a second language. In many of the cases, I use it to better understand the context of what I want to understand, of what I want to say. Culture gives birth to language. Translation and culture are intimately connected. Meanings in both source and target languages are profoundly affected by their cultural context, especially in business translation. In a moment, I'm going to say the history of translation. The history of the translation was based on the ancient Greek, that means a metaphrasis. It means to speak across word for word translation. Then Romans used it to maintain contact with other cultures and conquest the world. Also in Mesopotamia, the translation was used to enter in the Asian languages. Religious texts were also translated into other languages, and by the 19th century, the translation became the major method for the target language. But in recent years, the necessity for integration of explicit instruction into communicative approaches has become obvious. Discuss the importance of translation. Some mention that the teaching of grammar can enhance learned proficiency and accuracy. The process of translating. The process of translating is a practical approach. Determines how to transfer the contents of the source into the target. There are many models for translating. The number one, linguistic model. The linguistic model studies the linguistic resources of the source and target language and the mechanisms available in the target language for overcoming the structural difference between source and target that appear in translation. The next is text linguistic model. In this model, you have to take into account the various uses of language by speakers and writers in particular communicative situations. Then we are going to continue with sociocultural translation. In this case, the translation should always read like translations. In this case, I am going to mention Lawrence Benotti. Translators should not be invisible, and that readers should be allowed to appreciate the source culture. The culture is very important for translator. Translation should resist dominant target language, cultural values, and make it clear that the source text represents some linguistic and cultural differences. Then, resistant translation. In this case, the resistant translation is a denial of the power of language and the infinite novelty of expression that empowers every linguistic and textual system. Translation is not a single process, but a set of situation-specific processes. Now, continue with the computational model. In this case, the machine translation that it will take over the job of all except literary translation. The psycholinguistic model. The Think Aloud Protocol, TAP, I'm going to mention larger understanding of the ST, transcoding into TL, and formulating TT. Teaching translation. In this case, teaching translation is very, very important. Translation and interpreting has its goal to use of language as a tool in a future professional activity and component of reflection on language present in the classical philology degree courses is absent from it. The translators need to focus on the practical aspects of total proficiency in their source language and in their target language, together with the techniques used in translation. Proficiency in the foreign language is absolutely necessary for translating. One of the problems facing most university translator degrees is the deficient commands of the students' own languages. Translation as a language teaching tool. The translation is a skill of interpretation and re-expression based on knowledge of language and facts. There are so many advantages to use translation. For example, in the classroom, you can check on accuracy, awareness of context and form, and coordinate psychological reasons. As a conclusion of these chapters that I have read, I learned that the translation is not bad at all. It is part of the method that, although it was interesting all the time, it's no longer used too much. It is simply summarized as the interpretation of the foreign language in the mother tongue, while trying to translate everything as we read or hear can alter the context of what it really means a bit. Thank you for your attention. Goodbye.